The United States of America and Western countries did not consider Iran a rogue state or outside international law until after the Islamic Revolution. This is attributed to the new directions in Iranian foreign policy established by the Islamic Revolution, with the Palestinian issue at the forefront. The stance on Palestine was not merely tactical or propagandistic, but rather a principled and consistent position that has proven its effectiveness and sincerity over the years. The intellectual support provided by Iran to the idea of resistance and the Palestinian cause is as important as its logistical support for the axis of resistance. Iran's supportive stance towards the Hamas movement and its backing of the Palestinian people's right have prompted the world to discuss the necessity to pressure the Islamic Republic. Hence why recently Iran has been systematically targeted with security attacks bearing the fingerprints of the Zionist entity and its agents within Iran. Since mid-December of last year, Iran has faced three major attacks. First, a police center in the Sistan-Baluchistan province in southeast Iran was targeted, resulting in the martyrdom of at least 11 officers. This attack was claimed by the Justice Army based in Pakistan. On the 4th of this month, on the 4th anniversary of the assassination of former Quds Force commander Lieutenant General Qasem Soleimani, a double terrorist bombing targeted visitors to his grave in Kerman, southeast of Iran, resulting in over 100 martyrs. The Daesh terrorist organization claimed responsibility for this attack. This occurred just a week after the assassination of General Razi Mousawi in Damascus by Zionist Israel and a day after the Beirut assassination of Sheikh Saleh al-Aruri, the deputy head of the political bureau of the Islamic resistance movement Hamas. Those operations necessitated a swift Iranian response against their perpetrators, prompting the Islamic Republic to launch airstrikes against Daesh Takfiris in Idlib, Syria, and carry out a missile attack targeting an Israeli entity Mossad headquarters in Erbil, Iraq. Additionally, an attack was executed against the Justice Army militias located in Pakistan. The Iranian response was compelled to convey political messages to Tehran's adversaries by striking military bases near Erbil International Airport, just a few kilometers away from a key U.S. military base. Now, targeting Daesh in Idlib indicates that Iran wants its foes to recognize the reach of its ballistic missiles to various locations in Zionist Israel, such as Tel Aviv and Haifa. As for targeting Erbil, it sends a message that Iran possesses sufficient information about the activities of the Israeli entity Mossad and its agents abroad, and that it is capable of delivering painful strikes when necessary. Welcome to the Mideast Stream. I'm Marwa Osman. Since the 15th of last December, Iran has been subjected to three major attacks. These terrorist operations necessitated a rapid Iranian response to their perpetrators, Jaish al-Adl in Pakistan, or the Justice Army in Pakistan, Daesh in Syria, and Zionist Israel. Therefore, Iran bombed the Daesh terrorist organization in Idlib and carried out a missile attack targeting the headquarters of the Israeli Mossad in Erbil, as well as an attack on the Jaish al-Adl, or what's known as the Justice Army militia present in Pakistan. Now, the Iranian action had to happen based on the amount of pressure that Tehran has been subjected to recently. To discuss this issue with us from Tehran is Professor Mohammad Marandi, academic at Tehran University. Thanks a million for being with us, Dr. Marandi. Now, does this clear demonstration of strength, if you will, conducted by the Islamic Republic of Iran serve as a diplomatically costly display concerning its relations with its neighbors? I mean, wouldn't these attacks contribute to creating an adversarial neighborhood for the Islamic Republic?
Well, there were three different attacks, and they were carried out within 24 hours. The attacks on Idlib were against terrorist organizations affiliated with ISIS and supported by NATO and its regional allies. And therefore, the Syrian government was by no means upset, because that territory belongs to Israel, it belongs to Syria, and it is occupied by Syria's enemies and adversaries. With regards to the strike on Pakistan, it did create tension, but the local commander, he had to make a choice. He either had to strike them because they had gathered to carry out a major terrorist attack against Iran, or he would have had to refrain from doing so. If he had refrained from doing so and we had a major atrocity in Iran again, especially after the recent spate of terror attacks and the 100 people that were murdered and martyred in Kerman, that would have caused a major problem among ordinary Iranians. So he decided to carry out the attack, knowing that it would cause great displeasure in Pakistan. The problem is that Pakistan doesn't fully control those territories. Pakistan's army is focused on India. Mm-hmm. The border with Afghanistan is highly problematic, and Pakistan is very poor. And so this is a sort of no man's land. The Pakistani government, the Pakistani military struck a couple of houses near the Iranian border, killing a number of Pakistani citizens who it's not yet clear if any of them had anything to do with terrorism. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the relationship went back to normal, and Pakistan told the Iranians that they will try to do something about their military, its lack of presence mm-hmm. in the border area. And then finally, in Erbil, the Mossad presence in Erbil is illegal, mm-hmm. according to Iraqi law. The Iranians have warned the Iraqis many times about this. They are working against Iran. The Israelis have admitted they're at war with Iran. Netanyahu said so explicitly.
They're even working against Iraq itself.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, Erbil is not really fully under the authority of Baghdad. So Baghdad did condemn the attack, but I think it's quite clear that behind closed doors, the feelings in Baghdad are very different from what they're saying officially. Mm-hmm. They are very angry that Erbil is conducting business and has such close ties with the Israeli regime.
But look, after the counterattacks by the Islamic Republic, we had a new assassination last week against 5 of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps consultants in Damascus, in Mazeh. Now, Zionist Israel seems to be provoking the Islamic Republic of Iran, but it has an open front in Gaza. It's now it does have an open front with Lebanon, but now it's risking to expand it and provoking the Zionist Israelis are provoking the Islamic Republic as well. I mean, aren't they risking a lot of their own security by these assassinations?
Well, Iran hit the Israelis very hard, and it was expected that they would carry out some sort of retaliation. The damage that was done to Mossad in Iraq is enormous. I would say that Mossad's existence in Iraq has been wiped out for the time being. The Israeli regime, on the other hand, they are in serious trouble. They do need to expand the war. The prime minister needs to expand the war, and the regime itself needs to feels the need to expand the war because it's lost. It's lost on all fronts, against Hamas and its allies, against Hezbollah, and against Ansarullah and the Yemeni armed forces. So either they have to accept defeat, or they have to seek a way to reverse this defeat. And the Americans are on the side of the Israelis. The Americans have also, contrary to what some people may think, the Americans have been a part of this escalation. They bombed the Iraqi military in Baghdad, killing senior Iraqi officials inside a government complex, mm-hmm. inside a military base. And they also bombed Yemen, even though the Yemeni armed forces and Ansarullah have not killed anyone. Mm-hmm. They've only created a blockade for Israeli ports because they're carrying out genocide. Mm-hmm. Yet the Americans killed naval officers as well as ordinary people in striking Yemen.
Well, Dr. Miranda, I know for a fact that Iran was promised by many people, especially the Biden administration, the stars, the moons, and the earth, if they cease to support Gaza, to leave it to fend for itself and just stop supporting the resistance, especially in Gaza, starting with Gaza. But Iran doesn't seem willing to even think about this option, despite the winnings that it could have collected if it said, well, okay, I can do that. But wouldn't be now the perfect opportunity to hit this, some sort of diplomacy jackpot, if you will?
You're absolutely correct. If Iran halts support for the resistance and the Palestinian people in particular, then the United States and Europeans would be willing to do a great deal for Iran. They would remove all the sanctions and probably go much further. But this is an issue that for Iranians is based upon a principle. Iran, when the revolution took place, spoke of two international issues with particular interest. One was supporting the anti-apartheid resistance in South Africa, and the second was supporting the anti-apartheid resistance in Palestine. After the revolution, Iran broke off ties with apartheid South Africa and supported the ANC, their military wing, their political wing, and other resistance organizations. After the collapse of the regime in South Africa, Iran restored ties with the country. And this, with regards to Palestine, Iran is following the same principle. Iran will not accept an ethno-supremacist regime in Palestine. It will not accept the colonization of the Palestinian country.
Well, Dr. Professor Mohammad Marandi, academic at Tehran University, it's always a pleasure to have you with us. It's always not enough time to talk to you, but hopefully, inshallah, in other upcoming events, hopefully events of victory, inshallah. Thank you very much for your time and contribution to our show. Ladies and gents, please stay tuned, because next we are going to talk about the new risky adventure that Zionist Israel is trying to implement in South Lebanon. Now, contrary to the idea that prevailed during the last period of the United States trying to avoid expanding the battle, especially towards Lebanon, it seems that the lack of options before the aggression coalition made it look at the expanding of this war as a last option that would guarantee it going into a regional settlement and a ceasefire deal on all fronts. More details in this following report.
Zionist Israel is currently in a conundrum. Those running the show in Tel Aviv realize that the price of expanding the war with Lebanon may be high. But the remobilization of its forces on the northern front of Palestine and the media escalation against the Lebanese Islamic resistance Hezbollah, including the threat to assassinate Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, confirm that the political and military level within the Zionist leadership is seriously considering opening a war on the northern front. In light of this possibility, the Iranian and Yemeni escalation adds to its messages the readiness of the entire axis of resistance to expand its involvement in the battle. This escalation raises the level of American Zionist concern, seeking a way to avoid a long-term battle in Lebanon that would place them in a situation similar to what they are trying to escape from in Gaza. The Israeli occupation's portrayal of victory as it tries to market it relies on massacres and scenes of killing and destruction that dominate screens in an attempt to terrorize the peoples. At the same time, it provides material for the extremist Zionist right-wing audience thirsty for blood to continue supporting the Netanyahu government. These plans are not absent from the mind of the leadership of the resistance axis, which moves carefully and without confusion, supporting its military operations with a successful psychological media war, mobilizing its audience for the worst possibilities. The leadership of the resistance understand that this war will be harsher than all previous wars because its Zionist enemy knows that it cannot militarily break the resistance backbone. This will drive them to target civilians and infrastructure, causing the greatest possible destruction to impose their conditions on the axis of resistance through the gateway of humanitarian tragedy. Zionist Israel also realizes that its task is not easy, as the massacres committed in the Gaza Strip are unprecedented in human history in terms of scale and intentionality. Nevertheless, the resistance has not faltered and continues to impose its conditions, as seen recently in the deal to supply Gaza with medicine. For every Israeli entity prisoner, 1,000 boxes of medicine for Palestinian citizens. After more than 100 days of comprehensive genocidal war on an innocent people, Zionist Israel has not been able to achieve any of its declared or hidden objectives. On the contrary, new costs have been added to its initial losses resulting from the Al-Aqsa flood operation, losses that could have been avoided if it had chosen to respond in a different way. Today, the absolute same notion applies to Lebanon. If the Zionist enemy decides to risk its own existence, if it chooses madness over reason again.
Now to discuss this issue with us from Beirut is Dr. Omar Nashabi, political analyst and lawyer expert in human rights, supervisor of the Al-Qaws supplement, which is published weekly with the Lebanese newspaper Al-Akhbar. Thanks a million for being with us this early, Dr. Nashabi. Now, the possibility of an escalation in northern Palestine raises the level of American and Zionist anxiety in the region, which is looking for a way to try and avoid a long-term war. The same thing that's happening in Gaza, they don't want to see happening in northern Palestine. But do you consider that an Axis maneuver to eliminate the southern Lebanese option from Zionist calculation is possible?
Well, the front is now open. There are, continuous escalation by the Israelis and bombing civilians in southern Lebanon. And as you said, yes, the Americans are very worried about this apparently, and they have presented recently, they've been talking about a unilateral ceasefire, that the Israelis want to stop bombing for 48 hours, and they would, it's like a threat, they're using it as a threat that during this unilateral ceasefire, if Hezbollah will fire, then they will bomb the whole of southern Lebanon. This is a threat, and they are repeating these threats constantly, not knowing or disregarding the fact that threats do not work with the resistance in southern Lebanon and with the axis of resistance in general. So they've been bombing civilians, they've been doing this ultimatum and trying to actually make it seen in front of the world as an ultimatum. It's not, it's a direct threat. And yesterday they've been bombing civilians. This will create a bigger risk for escalation. And the continuous attack today in Khan Yunis is also increasing the risk for a wider escalation of the confrontation with the Israeli criminals who are committing a genocide in Gaza, as the tribunal, I hope the International Court of Justice will prove.
Well, Dr. Nashabi, the resistance leadership obviously know that if these threats are true, then they will be faced something that have not been seen yet in previous wars, because the Zionist enemy realizes that it cannot really break the backbone of the resistance militarily, which is why it might take things into its hand, as we saw in Gaza, by creating more massacres, by targeting civilians, by breaking the infrastructure and what we really used to see from Zionist Israel. But is that something that Hezbollah is ready to face, this grave human tragedy? Are they ready to face this?
Hezbollah is saying that this is related to the ceasefire. Hezbollah and the whole axis of resistance are calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and the halt of this genocide that is ongoing for now more than 107 days. This is what Hezbollah is calling for, and it will not back down. And it's saying that the front in the southern Lebanon, northern occupied Palestine, is a front that is open for putting pressure on the Israelis to stop the massacre in Gaza. Hezbollah will not back down. And the Israelis have to know that if they have tens of thousands of people who have been removed from the kibbutz in northern occupied Palestine, so they will not be able to go back to their to the kibbutz that they were removed from because they were afraid that Hezbollah will target the kibbutz. Hezbollah has been targeting military locations, but these military locations in occupied Palestine are hiding behind the so-called civilians in occupied Palestine. And Hezbollah will not back down. It is a matter of principle. Hezbollah will not leave Gaza alone. This front has been
even
opened.
If a human tragedy is being threatened by the Zionist Israelis, while we know that internally in Lebanon there are political foes against Hezbollah who might use that against him.
The human tragedy is ongoing. The Israelis have been committing a genocide ongoing in Gaza in an unprecedented way. What Hezbollah is saying, it's demanding an immediate ceasefire. Hezbollah and the whole axis of resistance in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq, in Iran, they are asking for an immediate halt of the genocide. What is the Hezbollah is not asking for blood and war. Hezbollah is asking for an immediate ceasefire. The whole axis of resistance is insisting on an immediate ceasefire. It is the Israelis who are escalating. They are threatening, they are bombing civilians everywhere, and they are threatening Lebanon, and they, as if they don't know that these threats don't work with Hezbollah. Hezbollah will not back down.
Well, let us imagine this, despite the fact that there's a 50-50 chance that it might not happen, but let us say the war actually started and Zionist Israel surprised Lebanon with a specific and fast and precise strike over a very short period of time, maybe not exceeding a couple of days or maybe a week, and then demanded a ceasefire and said, I'll go to a ceasefire. How do you think that the resistance in Lebanon and the axis of resistance would retaliate, or what kind of a position will they hold then?
What I can say is that today is different from 2006, and they will be asking for a ceasefire before the week ends, because they will be asking for a ceasefire because of the destruction that they will witness in occupied Palestine. The resistance is ready to actually bomb any location in all of occupied Palestine, as I said, and this will create massive destruction in occupied Palestine, not only in Lebanon. So therefore, what we need today is a ceasefire. We need international pressure from the international community. We're not very hopeful, but we hope that, somewhere there will be a breakthrough and the Israelis will stop killing the children, bombing hospitals, killing UN employees, destroying a whole population in Gaza. That is the demand. And any pressure that is necessary to push forward this demand will be done.
Well, the pressure that might escalate in Lebanon might bring along more escalation all over West Asia. How do you think the United States' interests will be affected in case this entire region blows up with war?
Well, that is really the thing that we don't understand. How can not just the United States, but also the supporters of Israel in Europe continue with this support for Israel under a false pretext of self-defense? They are committing a genocide. The supporters of Israel will be held responsible for any escalation, because I repeat again, and we must always repeat that the axis of resistance is calling for an immediate ceasefire and a immediate halt of the genocide that has been ongoing for more than 108 days. This is the demand. So therefore, whoever will actually not respond and block a ceasefire will be held responsible of any human tragedy that will occur in the future.
Well, one last question before we go. We are seeing a lot of escalations within the Zionist entities, government itself. Some people want the war to stop right now. Others, like for example Netanyahu, for personal reasons want it to continue. Is there some sort of a scenario that might come from within the Zionist entity regime that would stop this war?
I think they have so many internal issues among them, the Zionists, and they have, because there is such a high level of corruption, and there's such a high level of aggressivity and fanaticism and Zionism and racism. I think this will create more pressure on the Israelis. However, I'm not really sure that this, can prevent an escalation. Because apparently this may be seen, as it's seen by some analysts, that it may increase the possibility for an escalation because Netanyahu wants to get away from any accountability in Israeli courts. So he may actually push for more violence, more destruction, a larger genocide. This is horrendous, and I don't understand how come the whole world is incapable of stopping this madman.
We all share your questions with you, Dr. Nashabi, given the immensity of the genocide that our Palestinian brothers and sisters in Gaza have been facing, and also the West Bank, which, by the way, the mainstream media is not talking about for the past 107 or 8 days. Thank you very much, Dr. Omar Nashabi, political analyst and lawyer expert in human rights, supervisor of the Al-Qaws supplement, which is published weekly with the Lebanese newspaper Al-Akhbar. Thanks a billion for being with us and speaking about what the world has been just shutting its eyes from the horrendous genocidal war against Palestinians and the possibility of it escalating into Lebanon as well. Thank you very much, ladies and gents. Thank you for watching the Mideast Stream. Please do follow us on Telegram and on Twitter X, and we'll see you again next week with new updates from West Asia right here on Press TV's The Mideast Stream.